If the world were fair, why do so many unscrupulous people rise to the top? If goodness were the key to success, why do history's most influential leaders, from emperors to tycoons, often operate outside conventional morality? This is an uncomfortable contradiction, but a real one. We've been taught since we were children that we should be good, righteous, and just, because good always prevails. But in practice, what we see is something very different. Those who manipulate, exploit, and impose their own rules the most often occupy the most prestigious positions. Does this mean that being moral is a weakness, or that the world is simply cruel and chaotic, without any greater logic? Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most controversial philosophers, believed that this vision of universal morality was an illusion, a tool created to control the strong and keep the weak submissive. He argued that morality is not an absolute principle, but rather a power game, where those who understand its rules can dominate it. For Nietzsche, the morality we are taught as children is not an objective truth, but rather a set of values that have been imposed throughout history by those who wish to limit the ambition, strength, and capacity for action of others. The idea that we should be humble, peaceful, and always act altruistically often serves more to keep people under control than to create a just society. But if this traditional morality is nothing more than a social construct, what does that mean for those seeking success? It means that those who blindly cling to this vision may be, without realizing it, playing a game that has already been rigged against them. What Nietzsche proposes is not chaos or absolute immorality, but a liberation from imposed morality, an invitation for each individual to create their own values rather than blindly accepting the ones they have been taught. This brings us to a central question. If morality can be a prison, how can we navigate this world without falling prey or becoming predators? In the next few minutes, we will explore this great illusion of universal justice and understand how morality can be used as both a shield and a weapon in the game of power. Nietzsche shows us that there are two types of morality in the world, that of masters and that of slaves. Knowing how to differentiate between them can be what separates those who command from those who obey. There is a deeply ingrained belief in society that the world is somehow just, that ultimately good people will be rewarded and bad people will be punished. This idea is sold as a universal principle, whether in religions, popular culture, or even the legal system. But look around you, see how the world really works. If justice were an inherent force in the universe, why is history littered with empires built on exploitation, fortunes built on deceit, and leaders who rose to power by trampling on everyone around them? If the world rewarded virtue, shouldn't we see the most just and benevolent at the top? Nietzsche saw this belief in universal justice as a convenient illusion, a control mechanism. To him, there is no metaphysical force guaranteeing that good will triumph. What exists are power relations and the way these forces are structured over time. Traditional morality, rather than being an eternal truth, has historically been shaped by the weak as a way to restrain the strong. This is a central concept in his work, Slave Morality. The oppressed, unable to defeat the powerful directly, created a system of values that glorified humility, suffering, and obedience. They reversed roles, transforming their weaknesses into virtues, and convincing the world that these were the true moral qualities. This does not mean that Nietzsche advocated tyranny or the abuse of power. His point was not that morality should be discarded, but rather that we should see it for what it really is, a social construct that can be manipulated, a code of values created by specific groups to serve specific interests. And the greatest proof of this is that, throughout history, morality has changed repeatedly. What was considered moral in the Middle Ages is different from what we consider it today. What is acceptable in one culture may be seen as abominable in another. The question that remains is, if justice is not guaranteed, how should we act? Should we simply abandon any notion of ethics and become predators? Or is there a way to transcend this imposed morality without falling into outright cynicism? To answer that, we need to better understand Nietzsche's distinction between two types of morality: master morality and slave morality. One makes you play the game by someone else's rules. The other lets you create your own. If you live your life trying to be a good person, expecting that this will automatically bring you recognition, respect, and success, you may be following a code of morality that was not designed to empower you, but to domesticate you. For Nietzsche, there are two main forms of morality: master morality and slave morality. The difference between them is brutal, and ignoring it can mean spending your entire life playing a game where the rules are designed to keep you small. Slave morality is the one we are taught from childhood: to be humble, to accept suffering, to glorify weakness, and to expect justice to come from outside forces. This type of morality has historically been adopted by those who lacked power as a way to invert the logic of the world. If they cannot win by force, they convince everyone that force is evil. If they cannot lead, they transform obedience into a virtue. If they cannot conquer, they create a narrative in which the conquerors are always the villains. This morality places renunciation, passivity, and conformity as ideals, promoting the idea that anyone who deviates from this is immoral or evil. Master morality, on the other hand, is completely different. It is not concerned with external judgment, but rather with asserting one's own power and will. While the slave seeks validation and fears conflict, the master creates his own values and follows his own instincts. For him, there is no merit in playing the victim or in holding on to moral codes that only limit his possibilities. He sees no problem in wanting more, in being ambitious, in exerting power over the world around him. This does not mean being cruel or destructive, but rather not allowing an imposed morality to limit one's actions. And here is the big issue. Society as a whole tends to reinforce slave morality. From religions to systems of government and even cultural norms, there is constant pressure for everyone to accept a set of values that keep them docile and predictable. This often results in those who try to adopt the master morality being seen as rebellious, arrogant, or even dangerous. But who really defines what is right and wrong? Who wrote the rules that you follow? And most importantly, do these rules actually benefit you, or just those who want you to remain obedient? The distinction between these two moralities explains a lot about the world around us. People who follow the slave morality are often frustrated when they see ruthless and ambitious individuals taking positions of leadership, and the reason for this is simple. While the former wait for justice to do its part, the latter simply take what they want. However, this does not mean that we should accept that the most immoral will always win. There is an alternative path. A path where you can understand the game and play it better without having to give up your integrity. But to do so, you first need to understand how power really works. If there's one thing Nietzsche teaches us, it's that power doesn't belong to those who passively wait for recognition. It belongs to those who understand its nature, know how it moves, and most importantly, know how to use it to their advantage. And here's the truth that few admit. Morality is often a tool of manipulation, not a universal principle. Governments, religions, corporations, and social groups create moral narratives to shape the behavior of the masses. And this isn't conspiracy theory, it's simply strategy. When you convince a group of people that greed is bad, that seeking power is immoral, and that wanting more than what you've been given is a sin, you automatically eliminate competition. When the powerful promote the idea that true merit lies in sacrificing yourself for others, they ensure that the majority will never try to take what they themselves have. It's an old tactic, but extremely effective. Make people believe that wanting power is wrong, while you yourself wield it without hesitation. This is why so many good and talented people remain stagnant. They follow the rules, hoping that someone will recognize their worth. But Nietzsche warns us, there is no such thing as guaranteed recognition. The world does not reward the most ethical, it rewards the most strategic. And those who understand this shape the rules to their advantage, while those who do not understand are trapped in a morality that was never meant to benefit them. Does this mean that we should discard ethics altogether? Not at all. What Nietzsche proposes is not the absence of morality, but rather the need to create our own morality, rather than blindly accepting the one imposed on us. Playing the game of power does not mean becoming a manipulator or an oppressor. It means understanding that morality, when used without question, can be a chain that keeps us trapped. But when used intelligently, it can be a powerful tool for navigating society without being exploited. The central question is, Do you want to be someone who simply reacts to the world, hoping that justice will one day set things right? Or do you want to be someone who understands how the game works and uses that knowledge to build your own path? Because, like it or not, the world will always be controlled by those who understand these dynamics. And if you don't understand the game, there's a good chance you're being played by it. Given all this, it is easy to fall into the trap of cynicism. Many people look at the world and conclude that the only way to win is to play dirty, manipulate, betray, and trample on any principle. But this view is naive. The truth is that success based on pure exploitation and the ruthless use of power tends to be unsustainable. Nietzsche did not advocate gratuitous immorality. He saw no merit in simply deceiving and dominating others for pleasure or momentary advantage. What he criticized was the naivety of believing that the world would automatically reward the purest. But that does not mean that the opposite is true, that the cruelest always win. If that were the case, history would be an endless parade of immortal tyrants and empires that never fell. But that is not what we see. Think of brutal leaders who conquered the world only to see it all crumble within a matter of years. Think of empires that seemed indestructible but collapsed because of their own arrogance. Think of companies that grew based on unethical practices, only to crumble when their lack of credibility came to light. Power sustained only by fear and manipulation is like a fortress built on sand. It may seem imposing, but it does not stand the test of time. The mistake many make is to believe that, in order to escape the naivety of slave morality, the only alternative is to become a predator. But this is binary and limited thinking. True power does not lie in blind exploitation, but in building something solid and lasting. What truly separates the successful from the unsuccessful is not the lack of morality, but rather the ability to understand that values can be flexible, that strategy is more important than brute force, and that true power lies in creating something that does not depend solely on fear or fraud to sustain itself. Nietzsche believed that true greatness comes from the ability to transcend imposed rules, not simply to break them out of rebellion. The game of power belongs neither to the naive who believe in blind justice, nor to the predators who believe they can crush everything without consequences. It belongs to those who understand how to structure something that will stand the test of time. So the question that remains is not just how to reach the top, but how to stay there without building your own downfall. And for that, we need something more than just strength. We need vision. If neither the naivety of moralists nor the cynicism of manipulators guarantees true power, what is the ideal path? Nietzsche offers a bold answer: the Übermensch. This idea, often misunderstood, represents something much greater than a simple, powerful individual. The Übermensch is not only the one who dominates, but the one who transcends. He is not a slave to imposed morality, but he is also not a mere predator who destroys without purpose. He creates. He sets his own rules. He is, above all, an architect of his own destiny. But what does it mean in practice to become an Übermensch? First, it means breaking with the inherited mentality. Most people live by codes of conduct that they have never questioned. They believe that they should be good because that's the way things are, without realizing that this goodness can be a mechanism of domestication. The Übermensch does not reject morality altogether, but he rebuilds it according to his own values. He does not act out of guilt, fear, or conformity, but rather out of his own free will. Secondly, the Übermensch does not seek approval. He does not need validation from a society that operates by rules he has already outgrown. He understands that the world is inherently unfair, so he does not expect justice. He creates it. If something is wrong, he does not complain, he takes action. If circumstances are adverse, he shapes them to his advantage. This does not mean that he does not face difficulties, but rather that he does not victimize himself. For him, every obstacle is a test of strength, not a reason to give up. Another crucial aspect of the Übermensch is his ability to go beyond destruction. Many believe that breaking with traditional morality simply means rebelling against everything, but Nietzsche saw destruction as just a first step. The real challenge is to build something new. The Übermensch is not someone who simply challenges the rules. He creates a new game. He does not limit himself to criticizing the system. He builds a better system. Historically, we can see traces of this mentality in great leaders, artists, philosophers, and innovators. People who did not accept the limits that society tried to impose on them. Who challenged norms, but not out of simple rebellion, but because they saw a horizon beyond what most could see. Being an Übermensch, therefore, is not just about gaining power, but about owning your own existence. It is living without regrets for choices that were not really yours. It is letting go of the illusion of absolute morality and understanding that the only true obligation we have is to our own potential. The final question is, are you living by the values you have chosen, or just following a script that was handed to you? Understanding the game of power doesn't mean you have to become an unscrupulous player, but ignoring it completely is a guarantee that you will be just another piece on someone else's board. The big question is, how do you navigate this world without being exploited and without having to exploit others? How do you build strength without losing yourself in the process? The answer lies in the balance between strategy and integrity. Nietzsche did not advocate becoming tyrants or discarding all morality. On the contrary, he believed that true power comes from autonomy, not destruction. The Übermensch does not act out of blind instinct or guilt. He understands the game, but chooses to play it on his own terms. He does not submit to imposed rules, but neither does he become a slave to his own ambition. This means learning to use morality as a tool, not as a prison. It means understanding that the world is not inherently fair, but that does not prevent us from creating our own justice. It means knowing when it is necessary to fight and when it is more strategic to wait. It means, above all, abandoning the illusion that the world will reward you for simply being good, and instead building a path where your worth is unquestionable. The power game will always exist. The difference lies in who plays it consciously and who doesn't even realize they're being played. Those who understand it shape reality. Those who don't understand it simply react to it. The ultimate choice is yours. You can continue to believe that the world will eventually recognize your worth, or you can take it upon yourself to create that recognition, because in the end, the only justice that truly exists is the one you are able to impose on your own life.